everybody. Welcome to Book Club Social. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. I'm Beth Super-Buss, our interim program director of Bookmarks, and I want to thank you on behalf of Bookmarks for attending. Our Book Club Socials were some of my favorite events in store, and I'm really excited that we've been able to continue this online together. If you are a registered book club member at Bookmarks, please remember to email me your list of 2021 titles so we can get that updated at Bookmarks. We are happy to help you make suggestions for your book clubs. I think you're going to hear some great suggestions tonight. If you would like to register your book club, please email me. I'm going to put my email address in the comments. We would love to get you registered and help connect you with some great books at Bookmarks. Tonight, at the bottom of the screen, there's a button that says, for a list of tonight's book recommendations, click here. If you click there, you'll be able to see the full list of titles that we're going to talk about tonight, as well as a coupon to save 20% off your online purchase. And we'll be drawing from tonight's orders for 2 Galley prize packs that we can share with you. So just checking in, and let's keep going. I am really excited tonight to introduce Valerie Pierce from Sourcebooks. Valerie is the Director of Retail Marketing and Creative Services at Sourcebooks. Sourcebooks is an independent publisher with a really great story. And I'm going to drop their About Us in the comments so that you can read all about them. I think you'll be really intrigued by their history and what they're up to. Valerie's worked on campaigns for some of our book club favorites at Bookmarks, including the Radium Girls, The Other Einstein, and The Paris Architect. She works closely with authors and bookstores and is an avid reader. I cannot wait to hear what she recommends for us tonight. So let me invite Valerie to the screen. If you have any questions tonight as we go through for Valerie or any of our authors, please put it in the chat box and we will ask those towards the end of the evening. Hey, Valerie.
Hi, Beth. Thank you so much. I will. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Valerie Pierce. I'm the Director of Retail Marketing at Sourcebooks. As Beth said, she is going to put some about us in the chat box, but some part of our origin story I just wanted to kind of fill you in on because I think it does kind of connect to the DNA of some of the books that we acquire, is that about 33 years ago, our CEO decided she was going to create Sourcebooks. So she goes to her bank with her husband, and Dominique Rocca is at this point an ad executive at Leo Burnett, which is one of the premier advertising companies in the country. She works on campaigns for things like McDonald's and Maybelline, so a really, really savvy, smart businesswoman. So they go into this bank, and the banker doesn't want to talk to her, even though it's her money, even though it's her idea. He only wants to talk to her husband. So you flash forward 33 years, and now we are the largest woman-owned independent publishing company in the country, which is very exciting. It's wonderful to be a woman working at a company like that. And, you know, a couple of years ago, we started realizing that just organically, we really look at acquiring books by and about women and about their stories, whether it's a memoir or a romance or historical fiction or nonfiction. That's always just been something really important to us. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into my titles. I have a wide variety of bestsellers, recent releases, and some upcoming books too that are really exciting. So Beth did mention the Radium Girls, and I cannot talk about books without talking about the Radium Girls. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with it, it is narrative nonfiction, but it reads like a thriller. So back in the early 1900s, the radium dial companies had factories filled with women who would paint clocks and dials with a radium solution in order to make them glow in the dark, which was incredibly important during World War I. The women were instructed to take a paintbrush, dip it into their radium solution, then put it in their mouth so that they can make a fine tip point, and then paint. And the more dials they painted, the more money they made. That sounds horrifying to us now, but back then, the average person didn't know how dangerous radium was. But the company certainly did, even though they kept telling the women that it was absolutely safe. So years later, these women start to get sick, and it starts off really simple. It might be, a loose tooth or a back spasm or a pain in the leg, but soon they start getting sicker and sicker, and many of them start to die. And these women decided to band together And these are working class girls. These are not women with an incredible amount of education or a lot of money, but they decided, as sick as they were, to come together and to fight the radium Dow companies. One, so that they could cover their medical costs, which were incredibly just insurmountable. But really, the goal for them was to make sure that the world knew how dangerous this was, so that they could save the lives of the next girl that was coming into the factory. This novel, or this narrative nonfiction, is exceptionally well written. It's perfect for anyone who loves stories about underdogs beating a seemingly unconquerable system and creating amazing changes that are still felt today. All right, my next book is Sold on a Monday by Christina McMorris. This is a novel. We're going into boyfriend material. I can jump around. That's fine. Thank you, Beth. The inspiration for this story is actually a famous picture from the Great Depression that features children sitting on a front porch with a sign announcing that there are children for sale. And in this black and white picture, you can see a mother in the background of the photo covering up her face in shame. So the author, Christina McMorris, took the emotion behind this picture and used it to create the foundation of her bestseller. This work of historical fiction follows a young reporter during the Great Depression who stumbles across two children sitting on a porch with a for sale sign. He takes a picture, writes an article, and it goes viral. The next thing he knows, he's gone from small town reporter to a New York Times superstar. But in the back of his mind, he can't stop thinking about what happened to those two children, which then leads him on an investigative adventure as he seeks to uncover more of the truth behind the story and tries to seek redemption for potentially putting these children in harm's way. A really interesting piece of background information on this story, the author actually did end up tracking down one of the children that was in that original photograph, and that woman had a child that it was taken away from her. So Christina launched a huge campaign to help her track down her daughter, which they eventually did. So beyond this beautiful moment, this is genuinely a book that helps change people's lives, and I just absolutely love that. Next on my list is The Night in Question by Nick Joseph. She's one of my favorite thriller authors. This story follows a rideshare driver who is really down on her luck. Her family has health issues that have left them financially strapped, which is why she's a rideshare driver now, and she's just downtrodden and desperate for an opportunity to change her circumstances. And then that opportunity arises when she picks up a celebrity one evening and drops him off at a woman's home, a woman who is most certainly not the celebrity's famous wife. She connects with him again and asks him for money to keep this quiet. She's ashamed of herself for doing this, but she thinks it's really the only way to save her family. But when someone turns up dead in the mistress's building, she finds herself in a situation that goes from shame to danger. In addition to being an adulterer, is this celebrity also a murderer? If so, how far is he willing to go to keep her quiet? Next up is The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek. If you love books about the power of books like I do, then this is a great historical fiction for you. This is an extraordinary work that pulls from several true pieces of American history. During the Great Depression, Roosevelt created the librarian pack horse movement, where librarians took donated books in a satchel and went on horseback to the most poverty-stricken areas of Kentucky. That's the setting for Bookwoman. In this story, we follow Mary Cussie Carter, who is a pack horse librarian, and we get to see how the books transform even the most desperate people into a community. Another fascinating element of the story is that Mary Cussie Carter is blue. Yes, you heard me correctly, she's blue. This is based on an actual family living in the hills of Kentucky who had a strange blood condition that led to their skin appearing to be blue. So in addition to being a strong woman who traverses over miles and miles of some of the most desolate, dangerous terrains of Kentucky, Mary also has to deal with the prejudice from certain townspeople, which adds to the tension and suspense of the story and will have you all going down a Wikipedia rabbit hole to find out more information about it. Next is another amazing thriller. This is The Last Flight by Julie Clark. This book was an instant New York Times bestseller, and the New York Times Book Review had it at the top of their most anticipated list for the summer back in June. This book is about a woman named Claire who seems to have the perfect life. But her husband, a rising beloved politician, is actually a controlling, violent man. And the violence and abuse that Claire is experiencing is starting to escalate. So she decides that she has no choice but to disappear. Over the course of several months, she manages to save up money and acquire all of the paperwork she needs to escape. Her plan is to go on a business trip to Detroit, have the materials sent to the hotel, and vanish. Except That morning when she wakes up for the Detroit trip, she receives a nasty surprise. Her husband has decided to take the Detroit trip, and he's going to send her to Puerto Rico instead. That means that her increasingly abusive husband is going to get to the hotel, receive the package with her money and new identity papers, and discover her plans. When Claire gets to the airport for the Puerto Rico trip, she gets through security and immediately goes to the bar because she needs a drink. And that's where she meets Eva, a woman from San Francisco who is also in desperate circumstances. They chat for a bit and decide, what if we just change flights? We'll change identities. We'll figure things out once we land. It'll be easy. No one will ever know. So that's what they do. But then Claire gets her second shock of the day when she lands in San Francisco and discovers that her original flight to Puerto Rico has crashed into the ocean and that everyone is presumed dead, including her. Now she has no choice but to take over Eva's identity entirely in order to hide out for a while. But taking on Eva's identity might also mean taking over Eva's own desperate situation, and Claire has no idea what she's walking into. Next is boyfriend material. So if there's anyone out there who needs a really good laugh, and let's be honest, who doesn't need that this year, I have a fabulous LGBTQAI+ rom-com that will literally have you laughing out loud. Boyfriend Material is a rom-com that's perfect for fans of Red, White, and Royal Blue. It focuses on two very different men who decide to fake date each other in order to get what they need out of their careers and personal lives. But this odd couple soon starts to develop feelings for each other, and the line between fake and real starts to blur. If you're also a fan of very quirky, fun British comedies, I highly recommend this. I have a fun rom-com activity guide that actually goes along with this. I kind of call it highlights for adults. So I'll put my email address in the chat and just let me know if you're interested and I can send you a copy. Next up is the novel Every Bone a Prayer by Ashley Blooms. This one just came out in August. And this one is perfect for fans of Where the Crawdads Sing and is sure to become a book club favorite. NPR referred to it as one of the best books of the year, and it features a 10-year-old girl growing up in a broken family in a trailer park, and she's dealing with some pretty extreme abuse the only way she knows how, by leaning on her extraordinary imagination. This is a beautiful, extraordinary, strange story that is really filled with hope, is really about healing, and I'm just going to read one of my favorite blurbs to you really quickly, just so you get a feel for what this book is, because there's so much that's encompassed in the story. Every Bone a Prayer is everything and nothing. It is a love story to Kentucky and a horror story. It's cold and dark and sad and magical. It is fantasy and lyrical, and The Glass Castle and Lovely Bones and The Invited and Cat Person and a little Stephen King. It is everything, and it is like nothing I've ever read before. With shades of Colson Whitehead's writing, Ashley Blooms has delivered a genre-bending blockbuster of a book. Next up is The Paris Children by Gloria Galdrike. I don't know if any of you love historical World War II fiction the way I do, but if I see a book with a plane on it, I know it's World War II fiction and I have to pick it up. It is my absolute favorite. And I really love historical World War II fiction that focuses on real stories of real people, especially stories that I don't know about. So if you Google search Madeline Levy, you will find very little information about her, which is a shame because she is one of the great heroes of World War II. Madeline was born to a wealthy Jewish family in Paris. Her grandfather, Alfred Dreyfus, was a famous hero from World War I, so her family was very well known in France. When the Nazis invaded, Madeline actually had the opportunity to escape, but instead she chose to stay and fight. Donning several different disguises and aliases, Madeline proceeded to rescue hundreds of Jewish children from the Nazis, all the while falling in love and suffering a devastating hearing loss. So again, if you're a fan of World War II fiction, you will love this book, and I would say it's also perfect for fans of book club favorites like Before We Were Yours. Next is The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. This is the much anticipated new book from Stu, the author of the immensely popular 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which was an Agatha Christie mystery with a Groundhog Day twist and a quantum leap little thrown in there as well. Stuart is really the master of the madcap dark mystery. He weaves together different genres in fascinating ways and keeps the reader guessing the whole way through. This new tale is part Sherlock Holmes, part Pirates of the Caribbean, with a dash of Stephen King. It's 1634, and Samuel Pepys, the world's greatest detective, is on a ship bound for Amsterdam, where he's set to be executed for a crime. As the reader, we're not entirely sure if he committed the crime or not, but that issue has to go on the back burner when strange symbols start to appear on the ship and people start being marked for death. Is it a demon? Is there a rational explanation for it? Samuel has to find out quickly before they all end up in Davy Jones' locker. This book just released in October in hardcover, and the first book, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, is out in paperback if you'd like to try that one out. Next is The Arctic Fury. This is a new historical fiction masterpiece from Greer Macallister. Many of you may be familiar with the TV series The Terror on AMC, or the British expedition from the 1800s that tried to find a path through the Arctic Circle. If you're not, spoiler alert, it failed horrifically. No one came out alive. It was a disaster. And this story is fascinating because it posits that the commander's wife, Lady Jane Franklin, decides to hire a group of female adventurer explorers to find out what happened to her husband. She figures that all the men who've tried to figure it out have not made it, have not made any progress. So she's going to go with the women that she knows might be able to make it happen. So throughout the story, we go back and forth between two time periods. One, when the group of women are on their journey, and second, a few years later, when the leader of the journey, Virginia Reeves, is on trial for murdering one of their members. As the reader, you're on this journey with the women, and you begin to wonder, is this kind of like the Lord of the Flies in the Arctic? Or did this journey forge unlikely friendships between people who don't really get along or who are very different from different backgrounds? And most importantly, what actually happened out there on the ice, and how did this other woman die? This book comes out the first week of December, so make sure to put it at the top of your to be read pile. Going into nonfiction really quickly, we have Me and White Supremacy by Layla F. Saad. This is one of the most important books that my company has ever published. This is the quintessential anti-racist book that is a New York Times bestseller. And what it does is it takes the reader on a 28-day journey to combat racism. As someone who has read this book several times and tried to do the work more than once, I will tell you that it is not easy, but it is absolutely necessary. It is a challenge for white readers who want to do and be better. And what's really exciting is that in November, tomorrow, we are releasing a guided journal to go along with the book. So the book itself actually encourages you to start a journal as you're going through this journey so you can document it. So we decided to go ahead and create that for you. And then in December, we'll have a bundled set that includes the book and the journal. This is the perfect self-purchase for anyone who wants to work on themselves, or the perfect gift to give someone who wants to do and be better. I also have additional book club materials that go with this. So again, I'll put my email into the chat. And if you're interested in any additional materials, really for any of my books, please just reach out and let me know. I'm happy to get them to you. Next, we have another historical fiction, The Mystery of Mrs. Christie. This is by New York Times bestselling author Marie Benedict, the author of The Other Einstein and Lady Clementine. I can't actually tell you too much about this book without giving away the whole plot, but I can tell you it is a fictional story based on the true story of Agatha Christie's 11-day disappearance. What we know as fact is that Agatha's husband told her he wanted a divorce. We know that Agatha disappeared for 11 days, and we know she eventually turned up, and when she's finally discovered, we realize that she has used her husband's mistress's name at a hotel for the last 11 days. And she claimed to have no memory of doing any of this. Coincidence or conspiracy? No one knows what really happened during those 11 days, but Marie Benedict has her own theories based on her research. The book comes out on December 30th, so after a loved one sends you a Bookmarks gift card for the holidays, you can come straight to the bookstore and make your purchase. And now I'm going to move into January 2021. Hopefully all of the drama in 2021 will happen in our books and not in our lives. Next one is Shanghai Secrets. This certainly does have quite a bit of drama. So this is part of a historical fiction mystery series that focuses on a well-to-do Australian man who always has a way of finding himself embroiled in a murder mystery. In Shanghai Secrets, our debonair protagonist, Roland Sinclair, takes a trip to Shanghai where he meets a lovely woman who claims to be the long-lost Russian princess Anastasia. They share a lovely dance together at a party, and then she is found slain the next morning. Roland is, of course, the top suspect, and he must use all of his wits to discover what really happened to this mysterious young woman. One of the things that I love about this series is that you don't have to read them in order. I think I started with the 4th book in the series, but you'll be hooked. And then you'll be able to read several other books in the series, so there's no waiting. It's almost like the Netflix of reading. Very bingeable. Next is Happy Singles Day. If you love Hallmark Christmas movies and wish they extended to other holidays, then this is the book for you. In this delightful rom-com, our main character, Paige, is very proud to be single. In fact, she celebrates her singleness every year on February 15th. She is more than happy to live a life that's free of having to compromise or deal with someone who perpetually leaves the toilet seat up. But her plans to remain single might not last long when she meets Luke, a widower with a 5-year-old girl. Luke is just fine being a single parent. He doesn't need someone around who will bother him about always having to put the toilet seat down. But oftentimes, love finds us when we're least expecting it, or in this case, trying to avoid it like the plague. And now we're going to go into just a couple of my February titles. So these are ones to just kind of keep on your list. The first one is Here for You by Pat Simmons. This is a beautiful, gentle women's fiction novel. If you're a fan of Robin Carr or Susan Wiggs, Pat is a great author that I recommend you pick up. Her books generally focus on people who are experiencing some kind of loss, and she does it in a remarkably authentic, real way, but still manages to infuse her stories with an incredible sense of hope. And Here for You, we get to meet Rachel, who's put her life on hold so that she can take care of her great aunt who has Alzheimer's. Taking responsibility for her aunt, who she loves, is easy, but watching her mind and body slowly slip away is one of the most difficult things she's ever had to do. And that's when she meets Nicholas, a man who regularly visits the sick and helps provide comfort for them. When he meets Rachel, he starts to fall for her. But is he ready to be the rock she needs to lean on when things go from bad to worse with her aunt? This is such a beautifully written, poignant book. And again, I promise that while there are some heavier issues with it, it is truly a book about hope, new beginnings, and the power of love. Next is I Am the Rage. I don't know if we have a slide for this. This is an extreme drop-in. I think we just acquired it, and we are putting it into February because we are so excited about this one. This is a poetry collection by Martina McGowan. Again, I apologize. It's kind of a last-minute add-in that I talked to Jamie about. I'm excited about this one, and I wanted to give you a sneak peek. Dr. Martina McGowan is a retired physician and grandmother who has lived through and seen protests about race throughout her life. But when she saw the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the resulting protests, she needed an outlet for the pain, the anger, and all of the feelings she was experiencing as a Black woman who has seen systematic racism exposed again and again and again throughout her lifetime. So she started a blog where she began writing poetry. And one of our other authors recommended that we check out her website, and we all just felt like this was such important work that we wanted to get it out into the world as quickly as possible. I Am the Rage is the poetry collection that explores racial injustice from the raw, unfiltered viewpoint of a Black woman in America, and it really puts the reader in a position where they can feel the power of those emotions. So again, I just want you to keep that book on your radar. We're in love with this collection, and we really want to share it with everyone. And then last but not least, I do have a cover for this one, is One Last Thriller to keep you on the edge of your seats. This one is Black Widows. The story starts with the murder of Blake Nelson. The police are sure that his wife killed him, but the real question is, which one? Because Blake is a polygamist with 3 wives. They may have all loved him, but they certainly didn't like him very much, especially towards the end. Each one had a motive, and each had the opportunity. As the reader, we get to read the perspectives of all 3 wives, and we slowly start to put the mystery together. This is a story of wife and death, and you'll be racing to the end to find out what really happened. So thank you so much for listening to me and giving me the opportunity to talk about all these books that I love so much. It's such a pleasure to be able to do that. And now we're going to go into a really exciting portion of the evening, which is listening to our authors. So first up is Nefertiti Austin, who is someone I've had the pleasure of traveling with and who I just absolutely adore. Her book is fantastic. It's one of my favorite memoirs I've ever read. She is the author and memoirist who writes about the erasure of diverse voices in motherhood in the critically acclaimed Motherhood So White, a memoir of race, gender, and parenting in America. Her work around this topic has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Huffington Post, Mother, Gen Medium, and many other publications. She was the subject of an article on race and adoption in The Atlantic and appeared on numerous shows, podcasts, and radio programs, including The Today Show, 1A with Joshua Johnson, and NPR. Nefertiti is the proud adopted mother of 2 children and lives in Los Angeles, California. Nefertiti, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, how are you? So happy to see you again. Oh, can you hear me okay? Oh, hi everyone. So as Valerie mentioned, my name is Nefertiti Austin and I live in Los Angeles, and I'm super excited to be here. So my memoir, Motherhood So White, a memoir of race, gender, and parenting in America, really sort of organically came about. I wanted to adopt. That was my first path to parenthood, and I had all these great ideas about what I was going to do, and this is the height of all the mommy wars. And so I thought, okay, while I'm going through the adoption process, I'll do some research because I love information. And I go looking for books on motherhood. Specifically, I was looking for myself on the page. I was looking for Black women who had adopted, single Black women who had adopted, and I kept coming up short. So there would be, an anecdote here, something there, but I never saw myself on the page. And so my early writing was really a lot of rants and rages against the machine. And I really felt erased by the parenting genre, motherhood in particular, because what was evident was that motherhood in our country was synonymous with white mothers. And I realized that there's diversity within white motherhood, but that wasn't the impression, that isn't the impression that's given. It's basically you are a white mother and all of your issues are paramount to everyone else's. And so when I began writing, never dreaming it would turn into a memoir, I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to be able to talk about the layers of stress and fear that occur for mothers of color and for mothers of Black children, Black boys in particular. And I think that, in fact, I know my own education with really understanding what it means to be a Black mother in America occurred shortly after Trayvon Martin was murdered. And it was my racial awakening at that point that I would really have to parent from a space of fear, fear that when he goes out into the world, someone will hurt him just because of his skin color, because of his race, because of his gender. And I had to get myself together very quickly. I had to educate my son on his racial history and just remind him that no matter what happens in this world, he deserves to be here, and he's beautiful and he's special, and I'm here for him. And so in addition to really learning as I went and experiencing in real time what it means to have Black children in white spaces, and really getting an early jump on helping teachers and administrators at my kids' school with language. So in those days, we didn't know anti-racism, anti-racist teaching. We didn't know those things. We just knew that it didn't feel good. And so we had lots of conversations. And so in addition to really, I hope you guys can hear me okay. My daughter has made it home. So in addition to really having to get my own motherhood chops up with parenting children of color, really also understanding my place in the world and sort of reconciling how Black mothers have been marginalized in this country, and as simple as the media and as simple as television, and having grown up in the 90s and looking at my maternal heroes and wondering why is it that Murphy Brown got such wonderful support as a single mother, but then Black women were subjected to then and now Reagan's dog whistle as welfare queen. And so there's so many racial hierarchies within motherhood. We're working them out. This past summer was crazy. The deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, et cetera, et cetera. It just brought up so many feelings as a mother and wanting to continue to keep my kids safe. And I've had the pleasure of speaking with organizations such as this. And so many white women have reached out and wanting to talk about how can we support each other? How can we keep each other safe? How can we keep our children safe? And how can we be better and raise empathetic children in the world? And one of the things that we can definitely do is acknowledge our differences, because in our differences, there's a lot of strength, and to support one another and to remember that, all mothers want the same thing, and that is to raise healthy, loving, empathetic children. But in order to make that happen, we certainly have to do that together. So that's my spiel. That's who I am. And certainly open to answering any questions if anybody has any. Oh, so I checked the chat. Okay, here we go.
Thank you, Nefertiti. I think that Beth might be doing some questions at the end, so I will go ahead and introduce our next author. Geologist and lifelong science nerd Sarah Morgenthaler is a passionate supporter of chocolate chip cookies, geeking out over rocks, and playing with her rescue pit bull, Sammy. When not writing contemporary romance and romantic comedy, Sarah can be found traveling with her husband, hiking national parks, and enjoying her own happily ever after. Sarah is the indie romance bestselling author of The Tourist Attraction, which is a house favorite at Sourcebooks, and I think it might also be a favorite at Bookmarks. Sarah, are you ready to tell us a little bit about Tourist Attraction?
Can you hear me?
I can, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Thank you, Bookmarks, and thank you, Sourcebooks, for partnering for this event. I'm really excited to be here. It's great to be here with Nefertiti and Caroline. My name is Sarah Morgenthaler. I'm a geologist turned romance writer, and I am the author of the Moose Springs, Alaska series. There's a series of fun, lighthearted rom-coms that are set in this fictional town of Moose Springs, Alaska. And my debut novel, The Tourist Attraction, that they were talking about, came out in May. And I actually just had another book come out a couple weeks ago, the sequel to Tourist, called Mistletoe and Mr. Right. But I thought I was supposed to talk about Mistletoe and Mr. Right. I'm really sorry. So if anybody has any questions about Tourist, ask me the questions in the chat and I will answer anything that I can. So a few facts about me is I love being outside. I love traveling. We have this super cute little rescue pit bull named Sammy who travels with us, and she loves her sweaters, and she's a diva, and I just love her so much. And on one of our travels, I was up in Alaska doing near Anchorage doing research for a different book, actually. And a friend had come with me, and this friend wanted to do all sorts of touristy type excursions, like going to see glaciers and going to whale watching and ATV tours and things like that. And we had gotten there kind of at the wrong time. It was right before tourist season happened, so a lot of the groups were just kind of getting everything going, and it ended up being just this series of comical events. And by the end of the trip, the idea of Moose Springs had been born. So Moose Springs, Alaska is a tiny little mountain town in the fictional town of Moose Springs, and it's full of quirky locals who they adore their town and they adore all the wildlife that's in their town. There's lots and lots of moose. Moose definitely make lots of cameos in these stories. And they love their town as it is. And one of the problems for Moose Springs is they have lots of other people like Moose Springs too. It's a big tourist area, so they're constantly overrun with tourists who come to stay in this luxury resort up on the mountainside. And they just get in the way, they cause all sorts of problems, and the town is kind of stuck between needing the tourism dollars to keep going and just not being able to stand the people that are there. So in Mistletoe and Mr. Right, our heroine, Lana Montgomery, her right there, she's come to town to try to build a luxury condominium project. which is intended to help kind of stabilize the economy. When you have a lot of tourists come into town, those tourist dollars are just there in little pockets of time. What she's hoping for is to bring more consistent money into the town to kind of help Moose Springs survive. But she's loved the town since she was a little girl. She has all these fond memories of coming to visit there. But unfortunately, the townspeople have zero interest in her project. So in an effort to win the locals over, Lana has agreed to try to help capture this local Scrooge of a moose named the Santa Moose. And it's going around town just destroying all of the Christmas decorations everyone has. And it's just it's causing all of this havoc. And Lana is woefully unqualified to catch this moose, but she's decided that she's going to do her best to help the town and try to get them to be on her side. And so she's trying to catch this moose. Enter our hero, Rick Harding. He's this sweet, quiet cinnamon roll hero who he's very gun shy about dating. He's had a pretty rough divorce, and but unfortunately he's had this huge crush on Lana, and she has this very big personality, and he's I love that in the chat. I love unqualified to catch a moose. Oh yeah, she's totally unqualified to catch a moose. She's not ready for this at all. But Rick has such a huge crush on Lana, and he agrees to help her catch this moose. And what ensues are just lots of fun, flirty scenes and first date of just nightmare, epic proportions of a nightmare of a first date. Like a far too tight Santa suit, and some very cute animal cameos. Rick has a hedgehog, so the hedgehog is my favorite part of the book, actually. But along with the fun of Mistletoe, there's also a little bit more serious topics of just the concept of the importance of family, especially chosen family. Fighting to be loved and to be happy, and you don't have to be perfect, but you just need the people who see the real you and appreciate you and want you around. And in Rick's case, having the hedgehog never hurts. But there's also an underlying theme of responsible tourism in these stories. It's a big part of tourist attraction too, is when people are coming to a place, you're going to somebody's home. Just because you want to go visit there and have fun and enjoy yourself and see the beautiful mountains, this is some people's home, and there's wildlife that lives there, and you need to kind of be responsible with the places that we're blessed to have, these beautiful places, and we just need to take care of them. Deeper into what made these characters who they are. And I just love Christmas stories where you can just bring two lonely people together and I made notes. January, enjoy the view. These are basically the small town, lighthearted destination romance with low heat, lots of quirky characters, animals and humans. And what I really hope that a reader can get is just a smile for a couple hours when they're reading the books, and just maybe take like an armchair vacation to a snowy mountain for a couple hours. So I hope everyone checks them out. That's awesome. Thank you. I also Ulysses. So.
I love the moose. Thank you so much, Sarah. Last but certainly not least is Caroline B. Cooney. Caroline is the best-selling author of teen suspense, mystery, and romance novels that have sold over 15 million copies worldwide, including The Face on the Milk Carton. Cooney lives in South Carolina. Caroline, would you join us and tell us a little bit about before she was Helen? And I do want to take a moment to just say how obsessed I was with Caroline B. Cooney's books when I was a teenager. I'm pretty sure I've read all of them. And when I saw the editor acquire a book from Caroline, I think I literally ran over to her desk because we were still in the office at that time. And I said, like, is this the real Caroline B. Cooney or is this somebody else? Hello, Caroline.
Oh, thank you. Hello. Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm really glad that you came to this. It's too bad we're not in person. It would be great to meet you, but at least we can talk this way. I did once write a book called The Face on the Milk Carton, in which a young teenage girl recognizes herself on a missing child poster. She immediately realizes that she is not who she thought she was. She's growing up with the wrong family under the wrong name. From then on, I was fascinated with the idea of not being your real self. And I thought, what if, unlike Janie in this book, who has no choice, she's just thrown into this, what if you are about 20 and you do have a choice and you decide to escape some nightmare in your existence by becoming a different person, taking on a different name? And think of the pain and the loss and the anxiety. You have given up your family, your history, your friends, your graduating class. Why? Why'd you do this? Did you yourself do something hideous that you have to escape? Or did someone do something hideous to you? Or is it both? Now suppose that you have pulled this off for 50 years. Nobody caught you, nobody even noticed, and you've covered your tracks for so long you think you're safe. Now, luckily, when I decided to write this for adults, I was living in just the right setting, a place called Sun City, which is something known as an over 55 active adult community. Who knew, right? The first thing you notice in Sun City is the unnerving similarity of vanilla housing. You really are invisible in your own house. The next thing you notice is the remarkable friendliness of people. They've shown up for the sole purpose of having a good time with new friends doing new things. Nobody cares about your background. They may ask where you're from, but then they move on to important things like, can you be the club secretary and are you free to play pinochle? So not only is your house anonymous, so are all your new friends. People might summarize an entire career by saying, yeah, I was in marketing. Listen, are you trying out for the play? And if they do ask about your background, you could say anything, couldn't you? Who's to know? You could add to your life or dispose of it completely. And out of 4,000 residents here, one of them's bound to have a shady background. It might as well be you. So your name in Sun City and for the last 50 years is Helen. Like most people in Sun City, you're a good neighbor. You probably have a key to several houses because you go in to water the plants when they're away. And if it's an even older person than you are living alone, you may go over to check on this person now and then. So your daily text goes to your neighbor Dom, who's completely unlikable. But he gave you a key, you text him, you check on him, he doesn't answer. You take the key, you go over to his house. Luckily, he's not in there dead. That's the last thing you want to deal with. But the house is empty. And you do something wrong. You prowl around. It's not like you. And you come across an amazing piece of glass. You can't even imagine what it is. You take a photograph of it on your cell phone. Now, there are younger people in your life, and you don't ever have anything for show and tell, so you forward this to them. But today's photograph is not going into an album. It's going to be forwarded on, and you are cooked. It turns out that this object was stolen. And when something is stolen, somebody somewhere is going to call the police. And you have left your fingerprints in this person's home. It is absolutely crucial that nobody should identify you. And you now have two people you have to save. The girl you were before you were Helen. Here it is. You have to save the girl you were before you were Helen, and you have to save the woman you are now. I absolutely loved writing this book. My second adult mystery, The Grandmother Plot, is coming out next year. I wish we could be meeting in person and enjoying each other's company. But until that happens, stay well and read armloads of books. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All of these books just sound like the perfect book club reads. I'm going to bring our author friends back on screen so that we can take some audience questions. Let's get Sarah. No.
Here we are.
Yay! Y'all just make me want to drop everything and read right now, all of your books again. Jamie wants to know what all the authors reading right now and recommending. So I'm going to start with Sarah. What are you reading and what are you recommending?
Well, I want to give a couple shouts out to some of the books that Sourcebooks mentioned earlier. I read Happy Singles Day, and it was super, super cute. Really good. And let's see, my favorite book of this year was You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Daria. It's so good. And I also just started In a Holidays by Christina Lauren, and that's a real fun holiday story. So that's what I'm reading right now.
Thank you. I'm going to say that's a good lead-in, folks, because we are hosting Christina Lauren on Friday for an In a Holidays cocktail party. So you heard it from Sarah. You should come join. Over to you. What are you reading?
I actually just finished reading The Baddest Bitch in the Room by Sophia Chang, and it was really very interesting. She's a Canadian Korean who basically grew up, her whole career was in hip hop, and she leaves hip hop and she marries a Chinese, I think he was Kung Fu. He wasn't, I got to get my story together. I want to say it correctly, but in any event, he was a master. And so it was just so crazy that she was sort of swing from a very loud raucous career to marry a man who was so very disciplined. And then after that, she went back into the music business. And it's really a great story about women breaking the glass ceiling, just appearing in places where you don't expect to see us and remaining strong and just having the support. Luckily, she had support of some men in the industry, but that's a very, machismo space to be in. And so it was wonderful just to read her story and how she got there and, how she managed to have success and have a family at the same time.
That sounds really good. What about you, Caroline?
I've been going back and rereading. Probably shouldn't, but I've been reading for so many years now. I can't remember how the books go. So I went back and I've been reading a ton of Agatha Christie. So I was particularly interested in, can you remind me of the author and title of the one that came up about the real Agatha Christie's disappearance, the one we just talked about. So that's the one that I want to read next. But I definitely, all of us should go back and reread Christie's books. They're really great.
That was, Valerie said, The Mystery of Mrs. Christie by
Marie Benedict. Yeah, that sounded great to me.
Those are great recommendations. Questions from our team. Book club, folks, this is your chance. If we were all together, we would have had some desserts and a little bit of wine. Let's see. Nefertiti, did you find anything out about yourself in your role as a mother that you had not thought about before? Jamie said, I'm still getting used to being a mom and dealing with all the expectations is tough.
Yes, a few things. One of the things I found out was that I was under the very mistaken impression I had to do it all by myself. I chose adoption. My family wasn't super supportive of it, and I felt like if I showed any weakness, that meant that I shouldn't have
No.
done it. Okay, you're laughing. Well, I didn't know. I did everything on my own. That was dumb.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. It took me a lot of years to figure out to raise my hand and ask for help. And when people were offering help, to receive help. So what I learned about myself is I'm not as strong as I thought I was. I'm happily not as strong. So that's a good thing. And the other thing that I learned about myself is I knew parenting would be hard. I didn't know it would be as physically and then later so emotionally exhausting. And especially in the last few years, the political climate has definitely directly impacted how I parent. And I'm waiting for a moment to really kind of exhale and really just be a mom, minus all of the extra layers that go into, again, being a Black woman and raising Black children. And so, hopefully one day I'll get to exhale, but I'm finding I'm still kind of holding my breath.
I wanted to ask a question as a reader. Sarah, could you tell us a little bit about your research into how you write the Incredible Moose characters? Because I'm convinced, she's living in Alaska, she's got a moose that comes into her backyard every year.
No, I've watched a lot of TV shows about Alaska, for research, but mostly I just kind of think of, okay, well, it would be kind of funny, so for me, I just thought that it would be kind of comical to have this moose that just, like in the first book, Tourist Attraction, there's a moose that is in love with the smell of these bakery buns. And so he spends most of the book going through trying to get, to the buns, whether they're in a truck or in a restaurant. And he's always just like on top of the vehicles trying to get these buns. And it just kind of just struck me as, it was fun to write. Mostly I was just trying to, if I was a moose, what would I want? I want some bread. So
I loved it. Somebody said, can we fangirl for a minute about the face on the milk carton? Yeah, I'm trying really hard not to geek out about it. A question for you, Caroline. Is writing for adults different than writing for teens?
Oh, very different. But it's such a relief for me. I mean, you can take a look at me and you can say to yourself, aha, this woman is no longer a teenager. And then you can say, aha, her grandchildren are older than that. And so actually it was getting very difficult to write for teenagers. So it was a great relief to turn to adult books. And also you can attack, as we've said, much deeper things. And I think the big difference for me was having a lot of gray areas. In this book, the heroine does some things that are morally pretty questionable. And yet she remains a heroine. I would never have done that in a YA book.
We have two more questions. So this one is for our romance book club in December. Sarah, are there any geology Easter eggs to find in your romance novels?
Oh, what is that?
Not so much in Tourist and Mistletoe. I think where the geology part comes in with those is I love rocks. I love nature. I just love mountains and just anywhere in, I just love like nature. And so I think that comes through in the writing because I always have characters that love it too. So in that sense, just that kind of the emotion is what comes through. In the third book, they actually go mountain climbing. So I get to talk about rocks a little bit more, and glaciers, and crevasses, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So I actually went too far in, and then I had to, through edits, like dial it back so I wasn't completely geeking out over it. But Caroline, I just want to say I love your earrings.
Oh, thanks. Yep, they're real bound
so
books. Are they
real bound books? Oh, they're so cute.
I know.
Our last question comes from Nikki, and I love this. We'll start with you, Nefertiti, and go through the group. What are snacks and drink of choice when writing and reading?
Okay, so when I'm writing, probably kombucha, Doritos, and hummus. I know that sounds ridiculous, but yes. And when I'm reading, a nice glass of wine is always, that's, can't beat that. Or coffee if I'm reading like earlier in the day.
How about you, Carol?
Is it me? You asked me? I don't eat or drink anything when I'm writing, that's work, but when I'm reading and all curled up and slouched down, I do like the Dorito idea, but I'm a Cape Cod potato chip person.
Oh, you're good.
And definitely coffee, always coffee.
How about you, Sarah?
I like water. I'm a water drinker. I nervous drink water every time I do a talk. So if you guys ever see me on anything, you'll always see me drinking water. And I think string cheese probably. I don't tend to eat a lot when I type. So it's hard. You'll get on your keyboard. So.
Well, thank you to the three of you so much. And thank you to Valerie and Sourcebooks. This has been such a lovely evening. I'm sad that we're not at Bookmarks, because now we would go over to the bookstore and we would get to mingle and sign books, but I have the same energy online, and it's because just y'all are wonderful. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Happy 16th anniversary. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. A few closing announcements for Bookmarks fans. Let me go everybody off here. Thank you for joining us. We have some exciting events coming up. Please visit us online for details, but we have Vivian Howard tomorrow night, Christina Lauren on Friday, Margaret Atwood on Monday. If you need reading recommendations, check out our year in reading. This is online on our homepage, bookmarksnc.org. It's all the books that we're reading and recommending. You might have missed some of those this year. You can come back and watch this event again tomorrow if you like. The recording will be made available immediately following this event. We'll send a follow-up email tomorrow with these recommendations. And if you enjoyed tonight's event, we encourage you to make a donation to help support events like this. At the bottom, we have a call to action button. Hopefully I can show it. It's not letting me prompt it. Here we go. We appreciate your support now and throughout the year, and appreciate you being here with us tonight. So thank you, stay safe, and happy reading.